The waitress hid behind a tall stranger, not knowing the Mafia boss was carrying 9 weapons. The air at Starling and Grits was so thick you could chew it. It was a typical New Orleans night in the Bywater. 99% humidity holding the smells of stale beer, chicory coffee, and the sharp cayenne of jambalaya hostage in the small room. The ceiling fans turned, but they were just stirring the heat, not breaking it. Outside, a soft Louisiana rain had started, making the neon sign hiss and pop, bleeding red and blue onto the wet pavement. I was June Calder, 24 years old and 6 months behind on everything that mattered. My white apron, stained with hot sauce and grease, felt like a suit of armor I had lost the instructions for. "It's real simple, Junebug," Sharky said, his voice an oily slick on the humid air. He tapped a thick finger on the folded papers. "You just sign. We adjust the interest. Everybody's happy." Sharky was flanked by 2 slabs of muscle who looked like they'd been carved from bad meat. The one I called Twitch had a nasty habit of cracking his knuckles, a sound like dry twigs snapping, one after another. They had me cornered in the back booth, the vinyl cracked and taped, smelling like sour milk. The diner was mostly empty, just a few graveyard shifters nursing coffee and looking determinedly at their plates. No one was going to help. No one ever does. "I can't sign this," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted. "The numbers, they're wrong. The original loan was for $5,000. This says 20. Sharky smiled, a grimace that didn't reach his dead eyes. "Interest, sweetheart, it compounds. Read the fine print you already signed. This is just the extension, a courtesy." He pushed the pen toward me. It rolled and stopped near my hand. I stared at it, a cheap blue plastic thing, and it felt heavier than an anchor. I was thinking about my mother, about the smell of the antiseptic at the Magnolia House, about the bill in my pocket that was 3 months past due. That's when the bell over the door jingled. It wasn't a jingle, really. It was a dull thud, as if the door had been opened with decisive force, not casual entry. The rain outside seemed to quiet down, or maybe the diner just held its collective breath. A man stepped in. He was tall. Not just tall, but occupying space in a way that seemed to defy the room's dimensions. The neon light caught the shoulders of a dark, impeccably tailored suit that was probably worth more than the entire diner. He paused for a second, letting his eyes adjust to the dim light, and his shadow fell long and sharp across the wet floor tiles, cutting all the way to the counter. I didn't know his name. I didn't know that he was Rinaldo Peruzzi, a man whose name was only whispered, a man who ran a shadow empire from the docks and warehouses lining the Mississippi. I just knew he was different. Sharky, annoyed by the interruption, looked over his shoulder. "We're closed. Private discussion." The stranger ignored him. He moved toward the counter, his steps silent on the worn linoleum. Sharky bristled. He hated being ignored. He stood up, knocking the booth table. "Hey, I said we're—" He grabbed an empty beer bottle from the next table. It was a quick, nasty motion. He raised it. I didn't think. I reacted. It was pure animal instinct. I shot out of the booth and moved fast, putting the only solid object in the room between me and the bottle. I ducked behind the tall stranger, my hands grabbing the back of his rain-dampened suit jacket. I felt the muscle underneath the fine wool go rigid. He didn't turn. He didn't flinch. He just stood there, a wall of expensive fabric and solid presence. Sharky froze, the bottle still in the air. Rinaldo Peruzzi didn't raise his voice. He didn't move. He simply tilted his head, a fractional movement, and looked at Sharky. It wasn't a look of anger. It was a look of immense, cold disappointment. It was the look a king might give a dog that had soiled his carpet. The entire diner went absolutely silent. The sizzle of the flat-top grill sounded like a forest fire. The guy at the counter stopped stirring his coffee. Twitch stopped cracking his knuckles. "Put it down," the stranger said. His voice was low, gravelly, with an accent I couldn't place. Not from here. Not from anywhere I knew. It was a command, not a request. Sharky's face went through a quick, ugly slideshow of emotions, rage, confusion, and then dawning recognition. A flicker of real, gut-churning fear. He slowly, very slowly, lowered the bottle and placed it on the table. I don't want no trouble, mister," Sharky stammered, his tough guy act evaporating like steam. The stranger finally turned his head, just enough to look at me. I was still hiding behind him. My face pressed against his back. I could smell the rain on his coat, and something else underneath. Something metallic and clean. Starch. I let go of his jacket as if it were on fire and stepped back, my breath catching in my throat. Now that he was turned slightly, I could see the lines, the dangerous topography of him. It was subtle, but it was there. The way his suit jacket fell just so, failing to completely hide the hard angle of a handgun's butt holstered at his belt, the slight, sharp bulge at his ankle that screamed switchblade, the weight in his breast pocket that was too heavy to be a wallet. I didn't know it then, couldn't possibly guess, but he was carrying 9 weapons, a walking armory disguised as a gentleman. He turned his attention back to Sharky and his crew, then addressed the diner at large. "Everyone's meal is on me tonight," he announced, his voice easily filling the space. He pulled a thick roll of cash from his trouser pocket, peeled off several large bills, and dropped them on the counter without counting. This should cover all the tabs, and a generous tip for the staff. The cook just nodded, his eyes wide. Rinaldo Peruzzi then looked directly at Sharky. He didn't move any closer, but his presence seemed to suck the air out of the booth. "Michael Antonelli," he said. The name hit the air and hung there. Sharky Michael paled, his skin turning a sickly gray. This wasn't a street name. This was a real name. A name on a birth certificate. A name his mother would use. In this world. A name like that, spoken by a man like this, was a death sentence. Twitch and the other one took a half step back, suddenly very interested in the exit. They hadn't signed up for this. "You and your associates work for Bay Crown Credit," Rinaldo continued, stating it as a fact, not a question. "They are over-leveraged. It would be a shame if their aggressive collection tactics became a matter of public record, or worse, a matter for my associates." Michael Antonelli was sweating now, the humidity in the room clinging to his forehead. "We were just leaving. No problem here. Just a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," Rinaldo said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying to every corner. "You will not return to this establishment. You will not contact this young woman again. You will consider her debt voided." I can't do that. My boss..." "Your boss will be contacted by Peruzzi and Sons Logistics in the morning to discuss the finer points of his retirement. Now, leave." Michael scrambled out of the booth. He and his 2 goons practically fell over each other trying to get to the door. The wind chime on the door rattled violently as they burst out into the night. They didn't even look back, but they left something. On the table, where the papers had been, was a single, folded invoice, stamped in bright red ink past due, a final, pathetic attempt at intimidation. The diner exhaled. The man at the counter started stirring his coffee again. The cook went back to his grill. I stood there, my knees knocking. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. The tall stranger sat down at the counter, in the stool closest to the door. He straightened his cuffs. "Coffee," he said, "black." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I grabbed a mug and the pot. My hands were rattling against the ceramic, the coffee sloshing over the rim and onto the saucer. I was mortified, spilling it in front of him. This man who had just dismantled 3 hardened thugs with nothing but his voice. I set the trembling cup down in front of him. He watched me, his eyes dark and unreadable. He didn't comment on the shaking. He just waited until I had myself under control. He took a sip. Then he asked his only question. "How many times have they been here?" I looked at him, at the sharp line of his jaw, the perfect cut of his suit, the absolute, terrifying control. And something inside me snapped. It was the last shred of my pride. I was tired of being scared. I was tired of being weak. I said nothing. I just met his gaze. It was the only weapon I had, a stubborn, foolish silence. He held my gaze for a long moment. I expected him to get angry, to demand an answer. Instead, the barest hint of something flickered in his eyes. It wasn't quite a smile, it was appreciation. He finished the coffee in 2 more quick, efficient swallows. He stood up, towering over me. "They will be back tomorrow night," I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. It was the threat they'd left hanging in the air. The invoice on the table? "No," he said, "they will not." He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a card case. He slid a single, heavy stock card across the counter. It was matte black. There was no name, no phone number, just an embossed symbol, a single, elegant black flamingo. Below it, in small, clean type, it read, "Peruzzi and Sons Logistics." It sounded so boring, so legitimate. "If you are wrong," he said, "you'll know where to find me." He turned and walked out the door. The bell gave a soft, respectful chime this time. I watched him disappear into the soft, murky rain, his silhouette blurring into the wet neon glow of the bywater. I stood there for a long time, staring at the black card. My fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it had a new companion, a dangerous, unwelcome spark of curiosity. I looked at the black flamingo, then at the red-stamped invoice. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I had just traded one monster for another. I didn't know it then, but he was thinking of me, too. Rinaldo Peruzzi was a man who understood the currency of fear. He'd built his life on it. He was used to the way the city bent to his will, the way people broke or groveled. But the girl in the diner, she had trembled like a leaf, but she hadn't broken. She had looked him in the eye and refused him. He found that interesting. He found that rare, something not molded by fear, and in a city like New Orleans, that was the most dangerous thing of all. I punched the clock at 5:30 in the morning. The diner was cold and smelled of yesterday's grease. The memory of the tall stranger, Rinaldo Peruzzi, felt like a dream, but the absence of Sharkey and his thugs was solid proof. They hadn't come back. My shift was a long, dull ache of pouring coffee for the early dock workers and truck drivers. I finished at 10, my feet throbbing, and took the rattling streetcar uptown to the Garden District. Magnolia House smelled of bleach and regret. It was the best place I could afford, which meant it wasn't good enough. I found my mother, Irma, in the solarium, staring at a hummingbird feeder. She looked pale, her hair thinner than I remembered, early onset memory loss, a diagnosis that felt like a curse, delivered by a doctor who couldn't look me in the eye. "Junebug," she whispered, her eyes lighting up as they found me. For a second, she was there. "You came." "I always come, Mom," I said, kissing her paper-dry cheek. "Did you bring the almond cookies, the ones from the French market?" My stomach tightened. I hadn't had the money or the time. "Next time, Mom, I promise." Her face clouded. "You always say that." I spent an hour with her, listening to stories about a childhood I never had, until her eyelids grew heavy and the nurse came to check her vitals. On the way out, I stopped at the administrator's desk, Mrs. Benoit didn't look up. 90 days. June, she said, her voice flat. "The bill is 3 months past due. We are a private facility. The board is meeting at the end of the week. If we don't receive payment, we'll have to transfer her to a state facility." "I know. I'm getting the money. I just need a little more time." "Time ran out last month." She slid the invoice across the desk. It was a terrifying number. This bill was the reason for the other bill, the one I'd signed with Bay Crown Credit. It had started at $5,000, a fast-track medical loan. I was a nursing student. I understood medical billing, but I didn't understand the fine print, the trap clauses, the compounding interest that had ballooned the debt to 4 times the original amount. Bay Crown Credit was just a clean name on a glass door. The muscle behind it, the men like Sharkey, belonged to the Belmont Syndicate. I walked out into the oppressive New Orleans heat. the invoice clutched in my hand. I was heading for the bus stop by the community hospital when a black sedan, silent as a shadow, pulled up to the curb beside me. The tinted rear window glided down. It was him, Ronaldo Peruzzi. In the harsh daylight, he looked even more imposing. His dark suit was immaculate, his white shirt crisp. He wasn't looking at me, but at the Magnolia House, his expression unreadable. "A hard place to be," he said, his voice a low rumble. I stopped, my heart kicking against my ribs. "Are you following me?" He finally turned his gaze on me. It felt heavy, like a physical weight. I was in the neighborhood. Your mother, Irma Calder, age 59, early onset dementia. The facility fees are 91 days overdue. A cold dread washed over me. "You investigated me." "I dislike bullies who target the weak," he said, ignoring my accusation. He looked at the invoice in my hand. "That is why they are squeezing you. Bay Crown, the Belmont Syndicate." "I don't need your help," I lied, my voice shaking. "The debt can be erased," he said simply, as if discussing the weather. "By this afternoon, the bill at Magnolia House will be paid in full for the next 12 months. I stared at him. A full year. Security? Breathing room? Why, what's the catch? "I want you to give me permission to handle Bay Crown. Handle them like you handled Sharky." "It will be a quiet conversation," he said. "No mess. It will not involve you. You will not be implicated. They are an annoyance in my city, and you have given me a reason to remove them. I just need your consent. I will not act on your behalf without it." It was a clean offer, a simple transaction, all my problems solved. All I had to do was nod to let this dangerous man unleash his own brand of darkness on the men who were tormenting me. But I thought about the way he had silenced the diner, the absolute terrifying power he wielded. To be indebted to a man like that, it was just a different kind of cage. "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was firm. He raised an eyebrow. He seemed more curious than offended. "You would prefer to be crushed by them. You cannot win this, Miss Calder." "I won't trade my freedom for your safety," I said, clutching the crumpled invoice. "I'll find another way." Ronaldo Peruzzi watched me for a long, heavy moment. A small, cold smile touched the corner of his mouth. It didn't reach his eyes. "Freedom," he said, his voice dropping, "should not be a privilege reserved only for those holding the knife." The window hummed shut, sealing him away. The sedan pulled silently into traffic and was gone. I stood on the curb, my legs trembling, wondering if I had just signed my own death warrant. That night, I walked to work feeling the weight of his words. When I turned the corner onto the diner's street, I smelled it, the sharp, chemical stink of spray paint. Someone had vandalized the front door. A large, dripping, stylized crown was painted across the wood in garish red. The mark of the Belmont Syndicate? My manager, Sal, was waiting for me, his face pale and sweaty. "You," he hissed, grabbing my arm. "What did you bring to my doorstep? June. Huh, the Belmonts. Are you crazy?" "Sal, I didn't. They're after me, not you." "This is my business, my livelihood. I've got a family." He shoved me toward the door. "You're a magnet for trouble. I'm cutting your shifts. You're off the schedule until you fix this. Get out." "Sal, please, I need this job." "Then you should have thought of that before you got in bed with shadows." He threw my apron at my feet and locked the door in my face. I stood there, stunned, fired. The red crown seemed to mock me. I walked home, the city lights blurring through my tears. My apartment was in a rundown building with a buzzer that hadn't worked in years. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, my mind numb. When I got to my door, I stopped. The old, flimsy lock was gone. The wood around it, which had been splintered and chipped for years, was clean. In its place was a heavy-duty, brushed steel deadbolt, shiny and new. My blood ran cold. I hadn't called a locksmith. Taped to the door was a small, white envelope. My name was written on it in clean, precise script. Inside, I found a single heavy key and a folded piece of paper. The note was short, 6 words. "Next time they will not knock." He'd done it without my permission. He had sent his people into my building, to my home, and changed my lock. It was an invasion, a violation of the one place I had left. I leaned against the wall, furious and terrified. The solid, cold metal of the key felt like a shackle in my palm. I let myself in, the new lock turning with a smooth, expensive, sickening click. I threw the bolt and leaned against the solid wood. I would not be his pawn. I would not be controlled by either of them. I grabbed my phone. There had to be someone, a real authority. I found a number online for a task force I'd seen on billboards, the Gulf Coast Integrity Bureau, the GCIB. I dialed. A recorded voice answered, "Thank you for calling the GCIB. All our agents are currently assisting other clients. Your call is important to us. Please hold." I held for 10 minutes, listening to a tinny instrumental. Finally, a bored voice picked up. "GCIB, Agent Harris." I explained everything, my voice rushing out, the loan, Bay Crown credit, the threats from Sharkey, the Belmont Syndicate, the crown painted on my manager's door. There was a long silence. "Ma'am, Bay Crown Credit is a legitimate financial institution. The Belmont Syndicate. That's a name from old stories." "It's not," I insisted. "A man named Michael Antonelli—" "Look, miss," he cut me off, his voice hardening. "It sounds like you have a personal dispute over a civil loan and some vandalism. That's an NOPD matter. This line is for major integrity violations." "But they're connected the system. If you don't have concrete proof of bribery or racketeering, there's nothing we can do. I suggest you contact a lawyer." The line clicked. He had hung up. I stared at the phone. A civil loan, an NOPD matter, the total crushing indifference. The system wasn't broken. It was a closed door. It was designed to keep people like me out and protect people like them. I sat on my sofa in the dark. I was unemployed. My mother was 3 days from being homeless. The Belmont Syndicate was painting targets on my life. And the only people who believed me were the ones causing the problem, and Rinaldo Peruzzi. The moral line I had drawn so clearly in the hospital parking lot began to blur. My freedom was a joke. It was the freedom to be fired, to be homeless, to be beaten. I looked at the heavy, new key on my table. He hadn't asked permission. He had acted. My stomach twisted. To fight monsters. Did I need a monster? The question hung in the stale air of my apartment, and I had no answer. 2 nights later, a car I did not recognize was waiting at the end of my street. The driver, a woman with a sharp face and her hair in a severe bun, simply opened the back door as I approached. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. The car smelled of new leather and, faintly, of his clean, metallic scent. We drove in silence, leaving the struggling neighborhoods and heading toward the river. She took me to a place I'd only seen from the ferry, the Claret Bridge. It wasn't a bridge, but a long, narrow building on stilts, pushed out over the dark water of the Mississippi. It was a jazz club, but a quiet one. Expensive. The driver led me past a doorman who didn't ask for ID and into a room glowing with low, gold light. A trio was playing, the saxophone weaving a slow, smoky tune that seemed to hang in the air like fog. The walls were dark wood, the tables small. And in the very back booth, facing not the stage but a wide window overlooking the Black River, sat Rinaldo Peruzzi. He had a small cup of espresso in front of him. He didn't stand when I arrived, just gestured to the seat opposite. I slid in. The vinyl was plush and cool. I didn't ask for the lock. I said, my voice was low, but it didn't shake. I was too tired to shake. "I know," he said. He watched the river, not me. It was necessary. "You got me fired." Sal was a coward. He would have found another reason to fire you by the end of the week. The Belmonts would have seen to it. He finally turned his gaze to me. It was intense, analytical. "You are here. That is what matters." "I'm here," I agreed, my hands nodding in my lap, "because the GCIB is useless. My mother is 3 days from a state facility, and I'm out of options. But if we are going to do this, I have one condition. Only one. He waited. No one dies. I won't have blood on my hands. I won't have you kill someone because of my debt. He held my gaze for a long moment. I expected him to laugh, to dismiss me. He was a man who carried 9 weapons. My demand must have sounded childish. Instead, he gave a short, sharp nod. No killing. A reasonable stipulation. Reasonable. I am not a butcher. Miss Calder, I am a businessman. The Belmonts enjoy chaos. I prefer order. He signaled a waitress. She'll have a cappuccino. He knew what I drank. The thought sent a chill down my spine. There is a code, he continued, as if explaining a balance sheet. The Peruzzi Code. My men learn it before they learn how to count cash. We do not deal in poisons, synthetic or otherwise. We do not harm children. And we do not touch doctors, nurses, or healers. It is bad for business and bad for the soul. A nurse, a healer, that's what I was trying to be. He had investigated me. Yes, but he had also seen me. The waitress set the cappuccino down. The smell of cinnamon and steamed milk was comforting. A small island of normal in this ocean of strange. The saxophone hit a low, mournful note. The warmth of the room, the scent of the coffee, it loosened something tight in my chest. I hadn't spoken to a soul about the pressure. Not really. My mother, Irma, I said, the words coming out in a quiet rush. She doesn't even know. Most days, she thinks I'm her sister, or her own mother. I took the loan for her, for Magnolia House. I was in nursing school. I just needed to cover the last 2 semesters, and her fees, until I could graduate and get a real job at the Central Hospital. I thought I could manage it. But the interest. I trailed off, staring into the foam. I just wanted to be a nurse, to fix things. Rinaldo listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer fake sympathy or platitudes. He just listened. Giving my words a space to land, he absorbed my confession, his dark eyes never leaving my face. The silence that followed felt respectful, not empty. My phone, a cheap prepaid brick, vibrated on the table. The sound was obscenely loud in the quiet club. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. My heart hammered. I fumbled to open it. It wasn't words. It was a picture. It was my mother. She was on the stone bench in the solarium at Magnolia House. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at something off to the side, her face a mask of confusion and fear. The picture was time-stamped 2 hours ago. My breath hitched. I scrolled down. 5 words. You have 48 hours. The cup rattled in its saucer. My hand was shaking violently. All the blood drained from my face. They had been there. They had gotten to her. Rinaldo didn't look at the phone. He just watched my reaction. They are predictable, sir, he said, his voice flat. They have no imagination, only brute force. They were with her, I whispered, the terror making my throat close. They could do anything. They will not touch her, he said. It was a statement of absolute fact. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and placed something small on the table. It was not a weapon. It was a small, smooth device, carved from black metal in the shape of an elegant flamingo, his symbol. What is this? An emergency beacon. It's registered with the Tri-Parish Security Council. I'd never heard of them. It was, I assumed, his version of the police. If you are in danger, if you even feel you are in danger, you press the center. My people will be at your location in under 3 minutes, faster than the GCIB, I assure you. He didn't push it toward me. He just left it there, sitting between us. A piece of the shadow world offered. You have another option, he said, pulling my attention away from the beacon. A clean one, as you requested. I looked up, confused. What do you mean? The Belmonts are sloppy. Bay Crown's contracts are predatory. My legal team has been looking for an opening against them. Your contract? It's fraudulent. We can sue. We can bury them in litigation. Expose their lending practices. It will be slow. It will be public. It will tie them in legal knots for years. It is your choice. He was offering me two paths, the law and his law, a lawsuit or a panic button. I looked at the phone. 48 hours. The law was too slow. The law had already failed me. I stared at my hand, the one resting near the cup. It was trembling so hard I had to curl it into a fist. I was pathetic, a waitress, shaking in a jazz club, about to make a deal with a man who was probably the devil. "Courage is not the absence of fear, June," and he said, his voice quiet, his eyes fixed on my white-knuckled fist. "It is the ability to hold steady, even when you are shaking." His words hit me harder than a threat. He wasn't judging my weakness. He was defining my strength. The saxophone player let a single, high note hang in the air, a beautiful, sharp sliver of sound. I looked at the phone. I looked at the black flamingo. I didn't say yes. I didn't say I agree. I slowly unfurled my fist. My fingers were still trembling, but I reached out and my hand closed around the cool, heavy metal. I felt its weight, its promise, its price. I slid it into the pocket of my jeans. I had made my choice. I had stepped off the curb. I picked up the cappuccino. My hand was still shaking, but I held it steady. I took a sip. Ronaldo Peruzzi watched me, a small, almost imperceptible nod. The deal was done. I woke up choking. The air in my apartment was not air. It was a thick, black, oily poison. It burned my lungs and stung my eyes. I rolled off the sofa, hitting the floor, and the air was slightly better, but it was hot. 2 a.m. A frantic, deafening banging rattled my new lock. "Fire, fire, get out, everyone out!" My heart seized. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and the one thing I now kept on the nightstand. The black flamingo beacon. I didn't press it. I just grabbed it. I crawled to the door, the metal hot to the touch. I fumbled with the deadbolt and ripped the door open. The hallway was a tunnel of gray smoke and shouting. My neighbors, the old woman from 2A, the young couple from 2C, were stumbling down the stairs in their pajamas, coughing and terrified. I joined the exodus, a human wave of panic, tumbling down the 3 flights of stairs and bursting out into the humid night air. We huddled on the sidewalk, watching the sirens approach. The fire was mine. My window, the one I used to watch the rain from, was a roaring orange mouth, spitting black smoke at the sky. The flames licked up the side of the brick, reaching for the roof. This was not faulty wiring. This was not a forgotten candle. This was an answer to the black flamingo in my pocket. This was calculated. The message was spray-painted in flames. "We know where you live. We can burn you out." The firefighters were shouting, hoses spraying, but I just stood there, shivering in a thin t-shirt and shorts. My home, everything I owned, the pictures of my mother when she was healthy, my nursing textbooks, my stupid, hopeful collection of coffee mugs, all of it turning to ash. Then I smelled him. Through the acrid chemical burn of the smoke, I caught the scent of clean starch and something metallic. Ronaldo Peruzzi was just there. He hadn't come in a car. He seemed to have materialized from the smoke itself, standing calmly on the periphery, his hands in his trouser pockets. He was not looking at the inferno. He was looking at me. He walked through the haze of water vapor and smoke as if he were walking into a boardroom. His pace was unhurried. He stopped in front of me. His presence blocked out the chaos, the flashing lights, the shouting. I was shaking, a deep, bone-rattling shiver of shock and cold. He didn't say, "Are you okay?" He didn't ask what happened. He simply removed his heavy, dark suit jacket, the one that probably cost more than my entire apartment's rent for a year, and draped it over my shoulders. It was impossibly warm from his body heat. It enveloped me, smelling of him, a scent of absolute control. I clutched it, pulling it tight. My teeth were chattering. "The neighbors are safe," he said, his voice a low, calm vibration. "No casualties, but the apartment is gone." "They did this," I whispered, my voice sounding raw. "Yes." He put a hand on my shoulder, not a gesture of comfort, but of direction. It was firm, proprietary. "Come to the safe house." We drove in the silent, black sedan, away from the ruins of my life. We went back to the Claret Bridge, but this time, the driver bypassed the glowing entrance. We went around the back to a discreet, unmarked door and a set of narrow iron stairs climbing the side of the building, hidden in the shadows. He unlocked a heavy wooden door at the top. It opened into a large attic space, a hidden world above the jazz club. It was beautiful. Dark wood floors, exposed beams, deep leather furniture. One entire wall was a massive angled window looking out over the dark, churning expanse of the Mississippi. The only light came from the moon on the water and the distant glow of the city below us, so faint it was almost just a memory. I could hear the muffled, smoky notes of a saxophone from the club, the sound of tugboats on the river. A low thrum vibrated through the floor. He gestured to a chair, and I sat. The leather was soft, deep. I pulled his jacket tighter. My heart, which had been trying to beat its way out of my chest, finally began to slow down, matching the rhythm of the slow-moving water outside. He disappeared for a moment into a small kitchen area and returned with 2 glasses of water, not alcohol, just water. He handed one to me. He turned on a small, heavy radio on a bookshelf. A slow, languid blues track began to play, the bass line a slow pulse in the quiet room. Ronaldo stood in the middle of the floor, framed by the moonlight from the window. He didn't offer a hand, he didn't smile, he just watched me. "A distraction," he said. "What?" "We will dance, a distraction." It was the strangest, most formal invitation of my life. I was covered in soot, barefoot, wearing his jacket over my pajamas. I nodded. I stood up, leaving the jacket on the chair. He moved in. He placed one hand on my waist. It was a light, respectful touch, but the heat of his palm burned through the thin fabric of my shirt. I put my hand on his shoulder. The muscle was hard as stone beneath the fine cotton. We moved slowly, barely at all. It was not the kind of dancing I had ever known. It was formal, measured. We were 2 people standing close together, moving in time to a sad, slow song. The space between us was electric, but it was also a boundary. I could feel his breath, warm and steady, on my hair. It didn't invade. It just existed. He was right. It was a distraction. And for 3 minutes, I wasn't the girl whose life was on fire. I was just held. The last note of the guitar faded. We stopped. He didn't release me immediately. He just held me there for 1 beat, 2, and then stepped back. "They are escalating because we are," he said. "All business once more." He walked to a large antique wooden table that dominated the center of the room and switched on a green banker's lamp. He unrolled a large document. It was a map, not of the city, but of a network, a spider's web of names, shell companies, and account numbers. "The Belmont Syndicate," he said. "They are not just loan sharks. That is their hobby. This," he tapped the center, "is their business." I leaned in. The logo in the center was a pair of stylized, open hands, Atlas Hands Relief. "A hurricane relief fund," he explained, his voice cold. "They wash millions through it. Fake invoices for emergency medical supplies, ghost employees for disaster cleanup, logistics contracts to companies they own. They profit from the city's misery." I stared at the intricate web of corruption. How can you know all this?" He saw me looking, not at the map, but at him, at the hard lines under his shirt. "You have been watching," he said. It was not a question. He unbuttoned his crisp white shirt at the cuffs and began, in a movement that was clearly a long-standing ritual, to lay out his tools on the map. "You are curious about my precautions." He unstrapped a holster from his shoulder, 1 compact handgun. He unclipped another from his belt. A second, he reached down to his ankle. 1 switchblade. He pulled a thin, wicked-looking dagger from a sheath at the small of his back, and a second, smaller one from his boot. He pulled a collapsible steel baton from his right pocket. He opened his wallet and slid out a thin, coiled wire with 2 rings. An old garrote. He pulled a heavy metallic pen from his breast pocket, a glass breaker and impact tool. He stopped. That was 8. He looked at the items, then back at me. "There is one more," he said. He tapped a small, almost invisible bulge under his vest. A sawn-off, pistol grip. 9 items, 9 pieces of steel, all designed for one purpose. I stared at the arsenal laid out on top of the Atlas Hands charity logo. The juxtaposition was sickening. I didn't say, "That's cool." I didn't say, "You're crazy." I looked at his face, at the deep-seated exhaustion in his eyes that his control could not hide. "It's so much weight," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "How do you sleep?" His gaze met mine, and in that moment he was not a mafia boss, not a stranger. He was just a man. "I do not sleep soundly," he said, his voice quiet, almost raw. "I stand watch." A jagged fork of lightning ripped across the sky, illuminating the room in a brilliant, sterile flash. We were frozen, 2 statues in the sudden white light. It was followed by a deafening crack of thunder that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. And the room plunged into blackness. The power was out. The small lamp died. The radio died. The only sound was the wind howling and the lash of rain against the massive window. We stood motionless in the pitch dark. I couldn't see him. I couldn't see anything. The silence was absolute. No, not absolute. I could hear the muffled thrum, thrum, thrum of the bass from the club below. They had a generator. It was a low, primal beat. I could hear my own heart, a frantic rabbit against my ribs. And then I could hear his... It was closer, steadier, slower, a deep, powerful rhythm in the dark that seemed to anchor the room. I could feel it more than hear it, a steady, living presence just a few feet away. We stood there, breathing in the dark, separated by a void, but connected by that one. Steady sound. It was the heaviest silence I had ever known. I stayed in the safe house for 3 days. It was a gilded cage, high above the river, smelling of his starch and the old wood of the attic. He worked, leaving for hours and returning in the dead of night, a silent shadow. I was safe, but I was useless. I was the girl he had to protect. "I am a nurse." I told him at dawn on the 4th day. We were in the kitchen, the windows gray with early light. I was drinking coffee, and I hadn't slept. Or I was. "You are investigating a medical charity. They are forging medical documents. I know how those charts work. I know what to look for." He stopped, his cup halfway to his mouth. "No." "No." I stood up, my frustration making me bold. "Ronaldo, they burned down my home. They threaten my mother. They think I'm a victim. I am done being a victim. Stop protecting me and start using me." He looked at me, a long, calculating stare. He saw the fire in my eyes, the one the apartment fire had not extinguished. "Atlas Hands is running a community health screening in Algiers tomorrow. You will volunteer. You will observe. You will not engage." The clinic was a farce. It was 2 folding tables and a worn canvas tent set up in a church parking lot, preying on the elderly and the poor. I wore a set of pale blue scrubs he had procured and a clipboard. I took blood pressures. I checked blood sugar, and I watched. I watched the head administrator, a woman with tired eyes, ticking off names on a separate ledger. I saw her billing for mobile nursing services and in-home wound care for patients who had walked in, gotten a free bag of aspirin, and left. It was a ghost operation. Then I saw a name that made my stomach clench, Elias Thorne, a patient from the hospital where I used to do my clinical rotations. A man I knew for a fact had been in hospice care for the last 2 months. His record sealed, yet here he was, on the Atlas Hands ledger, supposedly receiving 3 hours of daily physical therapy from them. They were not just inflating bills, they were stealing identities from hospital databases. They were laundering their dirty money through the names of the sick and the dead. As I was processing this, a black sedan with government plates rolled up. It was not one of Ronaldo's. 2 people emerged, a man in a rumpled suit and a woman who moved with a sharp, unsettling confidence. She was tall, her face angular, and her gaze missed nothing. Her badge read, Special Agent Etta Lynx, Federal Urban Integrity Service, FUIS. I had never heard of it. Lynx ignored the administrators. She walked directly to me, as if I had a spotlight on me. June Calder, she said. It was not a question. Her voice was low and smooth, like polished stone. You're a long way from nursing school. I'm just volunteering, I said, keeping my voice steady. Are you... She tilted her head, her eyes scanning me in a way that felt like a violation. It was cold, forensic. We're conducting a routine survey of federally subsidized relief programs. This one is very interesting, and so are its volunteers. She gave me a thin, knowing smile that showed no humor. She was neutral, but it was the neutrality of a coiled snake. I knew, with absolute certainty, that she was not the law. She was something else. I reported back to Ronaldo, my skin crawling. We were in the safe house. I told him about the ghost ledger, about Elias Thorne, about Etta Lynx. FUIS does not exist, and he said, his voice flat. He was standing by the window, staring at the dark river. It is a shell, a phantom, which means Belmont has federal contacts, or they created a rival agency to muddy the water. Lynx is a player. He turned to me, his eyes scanning my face, my scrubs. She got close to you. She just talked to me. Did she give you anything, a card, a pamphlet? No, nothing. He walked toward me slowly, his gaze intense. What is in your pocket? Just my keys. I reached into the side pocket of the scrubs. My fingers brushed something that wasn't mine. It was a small, thin square of plastic, no bigger than a thumbnail, stuck to the inner seam with a thin adhesive. I pulled my hand back as if I'd been stung. Ronaldo's face hardened, losing all trace of warmth. Do not move. He retrieved a pair of tweezers from a desk drawer and carefully, precisely, peeled the device from the fabric. It was a high-frequency data chip, a bug. Someone, while I was taking blood pressures, had brushed against me and planted it. They had been listening to my entire conversation with Lynx. They had heard me return to the safe house. He dropped the chip into a small, metal tin. We will find the fingerprints, he said, his voice a low growl. But they know you are with me. They know you are not just a victim. The next night, the training started. He cleared the furniture in the main room. She got too close, he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. It will not happen again. He was a terrifyingly patient teacher. He showed me how to break a wrist hold, not with force, but by targeting the joint. He taught me how to use my own weight as a weapon. He grabbed me from behind, his arm locking around my throat, cutting off my air. What do you do? He commanded. I panicked, clawing at his arm. Wrong. He released me. Leverage. Your elbow to my ribs, your heel to my instep. Drop your weight, create space. You are small. Be fast. Be vicious. He taught me how to see. The world is made of reflections. June. A car window. A shop display. The screen of your phone. Never look directly at the person following you. Look at their reflection. It tells you everything, and they suspect nothing. He took an empty beer bottle, wrapped it in a towel, and broke it on the stone hearth. He scattered the green, glittering shards across the floor. Walk, tu vois, he said. I stared at the field of broken glass. I don't have shoes on. Walk. I will not let you fall. Distribute your weight, the balls of your feet. Listen to the sound. You can move across a minefield without a sound if you learn to control your own body. I took a step, then another. He guided me, his voice low, steady, his hand hovering near my back. I was learning his language, the language of survival. While I trained, his team moved. He was adamant. We are ghosts. We retrieve. We do not engage. I will not have a war started in the streets. No one shoots first. His men hit a cold storage facility near the Algiers terminal, the one listed as the primary supplier for Atlas hands. They found what they were looking for, crates marked tetanus vaccines, filled with nothing but packing peanuts. Crates of emergency antibiotics filled with relabeled, expired saline. They were not just stealing money, they were creating a health crisis in waiting. But Ronaldo's caution had a price. Whispers started in the shadows of the city. The word on the street was that the great Ronaldo Peruzzi, the man who ran the river, had gone soft. He was distracted by a waitress. He was letting the Belmont syndicate run wild because of a girl. He was hiding in his tower, training her, instead of handling his business. Belmont heard the whispers, and they struck. Ronaldo's phone chimed with a message. It was a video link from an anonymous source. He opened it. My blood turned to ice. It was me, in the diner, starling and grits. The night I was fired, the video was grainy, shot from a bad angle through the window. It showed Sal, my manager, yelling at me, and then it showed me, taking a thick envelope of cash from him. It showed me nodding, my face a picture of guilty relief. It's fake, I whispered, my hands cold. Ronaldo, that is not real. He was firing me. He threw my apron at me. There was no money. It was a deep fake, a clever edit. They had taken the worst moment of my life and rewritten it. Ronaldo was silent. He watched the video once, twice. His face was a mask of stone. He was calculating. This video, if released, would destroy me. It would prove I was in on it. It would make him look like a fool, a man betrayed by the girl he was protecting. The fragile trust between us, built on shared danger and broken glass, felt like it was about to shatter. He switched off the phone. The room was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant horn of a tugboat. He turned to me, his dark eyes searching mine, looking for the truth the video had tried to murder. "Do you regret this?" he asked. His voice was quiet, devoid of accusation, but heavy. "Don't you regret calling me, stepping into my world?" I looked at him, the man who had shown me how to break a chokehold, the man who carried the weight of 9 weapons because he felt he had to stand watch over the world. I thought of Agent Harris at the GCIB, dismissing my terror. I thought of the firemen and the ashes of my apartment. My voice, when I spoke, was not shaking. It was as clear and hard as the glass I had learned to walk on. "No," I said, "I don't regret calling you." I met his gaze, holding it. "I regret that I ever believed the law was strong enough to protect me on its own." He watched me for 1 beat, 2. The calculation in his eyes faded. The doubt was gone, burned away and replaced by something harder, a dark, cold resolution. "Good," he said, the word clipped, "because we are just getting started. The tip was too good. A last-minute manifest change, a shipment of medical supplies for Atlas hands being diverted to an old, abandoned sugar warehouse in the Irish Channel. It was a trap. We both knew it. Ronaldo's men had swept it, found nothing, but he was restless. He had to see for himself. The rain was not a drizzle. It was a vertical river, a biblical deluge that turned the streets into black mirrors and the sky into a roaring drum. We moved through the collapsed warehouse, the air thick with the smell of rust, wet plaster and the ghost of 1,000,000 tons of processed sugar, a sweet, sickly decay. We were on a high iron gantry, the wind and rain lashing through the broken windows. It happened so fast I almost missed it, a single sharp crack that was not thunder, a muzzle flash from a dark corner below, a tiny spark of yellow. Ronaldo grunted. It was not a cry of pain, but a sharp, sudden exhale, as if he'd been punched. He stumbled, his hand flying to his head. I felt it before I saw it, a hot spray across my cheek. It was not rain. In the next flash of lightning, I saw his hand. It was covered in blood, a dark, glistening sheet. "Down," he yelled, pushing me toward a narrow opening in the wall. Another shot pinged off the metal rail where we had been standing. My training, the nights of breaking chokeholds and walking on glass, it all condensed into a single, sharp point of focus. "In here," I screamed over the roar of the storm. I grabbed his arm and pulled him through the opening. It was a maintenance closet or a small machine room. It was pitch black, cramped, and smelled of oil and ozone. The rain on the small tin roof was deafening. 1,000 hammers trying to get in. I slammed the heavy steel door and threw the bolt. We were safe for a second. "Sit," I commanded. I pushed him down against the wall. He slid to the floor, his long legs cramped in the small space. My hands were shaking. Dear God, they were shaking. But they knew what to do. I ripped the bottom of my own t-shirt, tearing a long strip of fabric. "Let me see," I said. My voice was tight, but it was the nurse's voice, the one that held authority. He was already leaning his head back, his control gone. He looked dazed, his eyes unfocused. This was not the man who commanded the city. This was a man who had been shot. I pressed the makeshift bandage to his temple. The gash was shallow, a graze, but it was bleeding heavily. The bullet had missed his skull by a whisper. "Pressure," I said, my own voice sounding distant. "Just hold this hard." He tried to take the cloth, but his hand was unsteady. He looked at the blood on his fingers, his expression one of profound, cold shock. It was not the fear of dying. I recognized it instantly. It was the fear of losing control, of being the one on the floor. "June," he whispered, his voice rough. He tried to stand. "No." I put my free hand on his face, cupping his jaw, holding him steady. My fingers were cold from the rain, but his skin was hot. "Rinaldo, look at me." His dark eyes, normally so sharp and analytical, were cloudy. He was here, but he was also far away. "Don't close your eyes," I ordered, my voice softening just a fraction, but still firm. "You are not allowed to check out. Stay with me." I leaned in, my own forehead pressing against his, a simple, grounding touch. I could feel him shudder, a deep tremor that ran through his whole body. I could feel his breath, ragged and warm, on my face. We stayed like that for a long moment, the world reduced to the 4-by-4-foot box, the deafening rain, and the hot metallic smell of his blood. I do not know who moved first. It did not matter. It was not a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of survival. His lips found mine in the dark, a desperate, anchoring force. It was slow. It was deep. It was filled with all the restraint we had been holding onto for weeks. The tension of the fire, the walk on broken glass, the nights spent standing watch. It was a raw acknowledgement. You are alive. I am here. We are still breathing. His hand, the one that was not slick with blood, came up and tangled in my hair, holding me to him. My hand stayed pressed to his wound, a strange, intimate act of violence and care. He was the one who broke it. He pulled back, just an inch. His breath was ragged, his eyes clear now, the fog gone. He looked at me, his expression stripped bare. "I will not," he said, his voice raw and heavy, "rush to make you an excuse. An excuse for this, an excuse for what he was, an excuse to be reckless." Before I could answer, we heard shouting outside. It was frantic, then fading. Rinaldo touched the small earpiece he always wore. A voice I could barely hear crackled, tinny and distant. "Boss, they're pulling back. The Fuis decoys. They saw the cameras and they're running." Fake Fuis cameras. His men had planted them. "Let them run," Rinaldo ordered, his voice already returning to its normal, commanding tone. "We are dark. Confirm the perimeter and pull out." He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the metal wall, the danger passing. He had chosen to let them go. He had chosen me, our safety, over the chase. We sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the rain and the fading sirens. He was silent, rebuilding the walls I had just seen crumble. I would not let him. I took his free hand. It was cold, but steady now. I did not say a word. I just lifted it and pressed his palm flat against my chest, right over my heart. It was beating like a trapped bird, fast and strong against his skin. He felt it. His fingers instinctively curled, gripping the thin fabric of my shirt, feeling the proof of life beneath. "Still alive," I whispered. "Still fighting." He watched me, his guard down again. "This," he said, his voice quiet, gesturing to the bloody cloth at his temple. "This is why. The 9 items." I waited. 10 years ago, he said, his gaze fixed on the wall, but seeing something else entirely. My younger brother, Matteo. He was all fire, no patience. We were checking a warehouse, just like this. An ambush, but we were young. We were arrogant. His voice went flat, all emotion draining from it. I was carrying maybe 3 weapons. 4. I thought I was invincible. They cornered us. I ran out of options. I ran out of bullets. He did not make it out. He looked at his hand, the one I was still holding against my heart. Since that day, I carry 9. It is not a tactic. It is a penance, a superstition, a promise to God, to him, to myself, that I will never run out of options again. Hours later, we were back in the safe house. The storm had broken. Leaving the city washed clean and quiet, I had a proper first aid kit, the kind I used to carry in nursing school. He sat on the edge of the bed, his shirt off, watching me. The gash was clean now. I worked in the silence, my hands steady as I applied the butterfly closures and taped the clean white gauze to his temple. The single lamp cast a warm, golden light on us. I finished, but my hands lingered, my fingers resting for just a second on his skin. I did not pull away. He did not move. We just looked at each other. The kiss in the machine room had been about survival, a desperate act in the dark. This was different. This was a quiet, steady warmth in a safe, dry room. It did not need to be a raging fire. It was a single, defiant light, and it was enough to hold the shadows at bay. The bullet graze changed him, the man who stood watch, the man who relied on 9 pieces of steel, had been saved by a strip of cloth and a steady hand. He was done waiting. He was done reacting. He decided to move from his world into mine, not violence, but information. He didn't go to the major papers. He knew they were on Belmont's payroll. Instead, he leaked the evidence his team had recovered from the cold storage, the real manifests, the ones showing expired saline and packing peanuts to an independent online reporter, a woman who ran a small blog called the Bayou Beacon. The story detonated. It was not just about fake medicine. The reporter, a tenacious old woman who had cut her teeth on City Hall corruption, followed the money. She exposed how Atlas Hands Relief had funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars into a shell organization called the Citizens for Municipal Integrity. This fake committee, in turn, had provided the entirety of the campaign funding for 3 key city council members who had just voted to approve Belmont's new, massive shipping contracts. It was not just theft. It was a hostile takeover of the city, bought and paid for with disaster relief money. Belmont panicked. They could not survive the truth. They needed to cut off the source. An electronic trace, likely from the bug Lynx had found, led them to a data relay tower Ronaldo used, deep in the cypress swamps west of Algiers. It was another trap, but this time, Ronaldo was the one setting it. "You're driving," he said. We were not in the sedan. We were standing on a dock in the black water of the bayou, the air thick with mud and night-blooming jasmine. The only light a sickly yellow from a single bulb. In front of us sat an airboat, a massive fan mounted on its stern. "I have never driven an airboat," I said. "It is simple. It is a throttle and a rudder. You just point it where I tell you. Go fast, and do not slow down." I took the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, a sound that shook my bones, drowning out the crickets and the frogs. We shot out over the dark, slick water, cypress trees flashing by like skeletal ghosts. They were on us in 10 minutes, 2 smaller, faster skiffs, black and low to the water, converging on our wake. "They are hurting us," I yelled over the engine's scream. "Good," Ronaldo shouted back, his hand on my shoulder. "They are predictable." Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness behind us. Bullets thwacked into the aluminum hull. "See the channel ahead?" he pointed, his voice calm in the chaos. "The one marked with the red flags. They think that is their kill box. They think they are pushing us into their trap." Is it? It is. Now aim for the center and do not slow down. I clenched my jaw and pushed the throttle forward. The boat leaped. The channel narrowed, the trees closing in. The skiffs were right behind us, close enough for me to see the silhouettes of the men, their weapons raised. I saw them just below the surface, a line of sharpened cypress stakes, aimed right at us. "Now," Ronaldo roared. "Cut the engine now!" I killed the throttle. The sudden silence was terrifying. The massive airboat, no longer pushed by the fan, slid across the water, its momentum carrying it forward. Ronaldo grabbed a long gaff hook from the deck, plunged it deep into the mud on the port side, and used it as a pivot. The boat spun, a hard, wrenching turn, and slid to a stop, the nose bumping gently against the mud bank, just feet from the deadly stakes. The two skiffs behind us had no chance. They were built for speed, not stopping. The first one, going full throttle, plowed directly into the trap. The sound of wood splintering and men screaming was ripped apart by the crash. The second skiff tried to swerve, ran hard aground into the thick cypress roots, and flipped, throwing its occupants into the black, churning water. Smoke poured from the ruined engine of the first boat. Men were struggling in the thick, black muck. Ronaldo pulled the gaff hook free. He nodded, his face grim in the moonlight. "Restart the engine. June. Let's go home." The data relay was a bust, but Belmont was desperate. They traced another signal, this one to a backup Ronaldo kept in the port. We were moving through the container yard at night, a steel canyon that smelled of salt and diesel. I saw it first, not the man, but the glint. My training. The world is made of reflections. It was a tiny pinprick of red light, high up on a crane, visible for just a second. It was not a light, it was the moonlight, hitting a lens. "Sniper!" I yelled, yanking Ronaldo's arm and pulling him behind a stack of massive blue containers. A fraction of a second later, the air where we had been standing cracked, and a high-velocity round sparked off the concrete. We were pinned. The sniper had the high ground, the only angle of escape. "I need a distraction," Ronaldo said, his voice low. He was scanning the yard, his hand already on the butt of his handgun. A real one, something to make him move. I looked around frantically. My eyes landed on a red box on the side of the container. A fire safety station. I did not hesitate. I ran to it, smashed the glass with my elbow, and ignored the extinguisher. I grabbed the small, polished metal mirror, the kind used for checking around corners. I angled it, catching the bright, full moon. "Cover me," I whispered. I leaned out, just my hand, holding the mirror. I found the glint, the sniper's nest. I focused the beam of reflected moonlight, a brilliant, sharp circle, and aimed it right at the lens. A muffled curse from above. The sniper flinched, blinded. The next shot went wide, ricocheting off steel, nowhere near us. It was all Ronaldo needed. He was gone. A shadow moving through shadows. He did not run. He flowed. I heard a brief scuffle from above, a single, heavy grunt, and then a metallic thud as a rifle clattered onto the roof of a container. Ronaldo reappeared, not even breathing heavily. He was straightening his cuffs. "He is conscious, so," he said, "zip-tied to the rail. He will be found by the morning shift. Non-lethal, as you stipulated." We took the data, the sniper's encrypted phone, the new manifests, and we sent them, not to the GCIB, but directly to Etta Lynx. We gave her the clean evidence, my analysis of the ghost ledgers, the shipping invoices from the cold storage, the fake vote-buying committee. She met us on the midnight ferry, a neutral space. She looked at the files on her tablet, her face impassive. "This is clean. Calder. This is admissible. Fois can tentatively accept Mr. Peruzzi's cooperation, based on your findings." As her male partner conferred with Ronaldo, Lynx leaned in close to me. The wind off the river whipped her hair, but her voice was a low, cold whisper, a word of advice. "Belmont's reach is long. They have people inside my bureau, just as they have them on the city council. Trust no one, not even the ones with the badges." Back in the safe house, the victory felt hollow. Ronaldo was staring out the window, the bandage on his temple a stark reminder. "It is time for you to go. June," he said, his back to me. The net is too tight. I have a place for you. Upstate, clean air. No one will find you. You will be safe until this is over. I looked at his reflection in the glass. No. He turned, his face hardening. This is not a negotiation. The danger is increasing. You have done your part. Now you must let me do mine. And what is your part? Ronaldo getting shot. Luring them into traps, I am in this. I have been from the night I hid behind you in the diner. I stepped closer. I am not a suitcase. Ronaldo, you do not get to ship me off when the trip gets dangerous. I am not another thing for you to protect. I am the reason this started, and I am going to be there when it finishes. He stared at me. A long, silent battle of wills. I saw the frustration in his eyes, but I also saw something else. Respect. He gave a single, sharp nod. The argument was over. The next day, he took me to Rose Laurel Cemetery. It was quiet, ancient, the live oaks dripping with Spanish moss. He stopped in front of a simple, clean headstone, Matteo Peruzzi. This is where I buried my promise, he said. His voice quiet, the sound absorbed by the damp earth. I told him I would finish what we started. I told him I would protect this city from the parasites. For 10 years. I thought that meant counting bodies. I thought a blood debt had to be paid in blood. He looked at me, his gaze heavy. You stopped me from shooting that sniper. You made me let those men live in the swamp. We have done more damage to Belmont's operations in the last week, cleanly, than I have done in the last 5 years of war. He touched the cold stone, the debt. It is not about counting the dead, June. It is about counting who we save. The Bayou Beacon story was still hurting Belmont. They needed a massive public display of power to save their reputation. They announced it that evening, a citywide live-stream telethon with a new hurricane, Helena, forming in the Gulf. Atlas Hands Relief was stepping up to save New Orleans, a primetime gala, hosted by the very councilmen they had bought, to raise millions. Ronaldo watched the advertisement on the television, his face a mask of cold fury. They are using the city's fear as a shield, he said. They will raise a fortune tonight, and it will vanish by morning. So what do we do? I asked. He looked at the television, then at me. A cold, dangerous fire lit in his eyes. They want a show, we will give them one. We cannot let them control the microphone. We will unmask them, live in front of the entire city. How? I said. The ledgers are complicated. The data is boring. The data is the bullet, he said, walking over to me. But you, June, you are the needle. I understood. I sat at the table and pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. I would not talk about money or shell companies. I would talk about medicine. I began to write a simple, clear speech, a medical statement about the ghost vaccination ledgers, about the families who thought they were protected from tetanus and hepatitis, but were not, about the real-world cost of their crimes, measured not in dollars but in lives. It was the one weapon they could not defend against, the truth. The plan to counter the gala was in motion. My speech was memorized, a scalpel of medical facts. Ronaldo was coordinating his clean assets, the reporter from the Bayou Beacon, and a handful of contacts inside the city's broadcast stations, ready to splice our evidence into the live feed. The tension in the safe house was a high-strung wire. Then Logan Vale arrived. Logan was Ronaldo's shadow, his right hand the man who handled the logistics and, I assumed, the wet work Ronaldo avoided. He was handsome in a cold, sharp way, and his loyalty to Ronaldo was legendary. He entered the room, his face a mask of efficiency. "Boss, I found a weakness," he said, unrolling a schematic of the Rivergate Pavilion. "Belmont's private security is thick, but the manifest they filed for their broadcast partner is sloppy. They left an entire service corridor off the list. It's a perfect blind spot. We can get a team in, right behind the stage." I looked at the map. Ronaldo stared at it, his eyes narrowing. "It is too perfect, Logan," Ronaldo said, his voice a low rumble. "Exactly," Logan agreed, a thin smile on his face. "It's an obvious trap. They want us to use it to walk right into a kill box." "So we avoid it," Ronaldo said, nodding, his gaze still fixed on the map. Of course. Boss, Logan said, rolling up the schematic. A clumsy move. I just wanted you to see the low quality of their thinking. I'll have our people secure the perimeter. 5 blocks out. We'll be ready. Ronaldo watched him leave. The suspicion in his eyes was a cold, hard glint. He was a step behind, but he knew, instinctively, that something was wrong. The flaw was not a flaw. The trap was not the real trap. It was a distraction. It was designed to make him look at the gala, at the service corridor, while the real blade came from behind. The call came 10 minutes later. It was not Ronaldo's phone. It was mine. The caller ID read, Magnolia House. My heart stopped. I fumbled for the phone, my hands suddenly slick. Mrs. Benoit? June? Her voice was a high-pitched, terrified whisper. Oh God, June, they took her! What? Who? Slow down. 2 men, a woman. They had uniforms, blue polos, with the Atlas Hands logo. I heard her take a shuddering breath. They had papers, June, official-looking. They said they were with the emergency hurricane response, moving all high-risk patients to an inland shelter before Helena hits. They knew her name. They had her chart. Ronaldo was at my side, his hand on my shoulder, his ear close to the phone. Where are they? I whispered. Did you see the van? No. June, the security cameras, they went down, just for 5 minutes, an electrical surge. They said when the power came back, they were gone. Irma was gone. Mrs. Benoit, Ronaldo said, his voice lethally calm, taking the phone from my hand. Did they leave anything? Yes, she whimpered. On her bed, on her pillow, a rose, a single white rose, but it was painted. It had a small black crown painted on the petals. Ronaldo closed his eyes. He did not need to say anything. The Belmont crown, my mother. He ended the call. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the sound of a levee about to break. I watched, horrified, as he walked to the table where his weapons lay. He was not performing his ritual. He was arming for war. His hand went to the sawn-off pistol grip hidden beneath his vest. Ronaldo, wait, I said, my voice shaking. Logan, he barked into his earpiece, ignoring me. Full tactical mobilization. All teams. We are going to war. I am burning the Belmont Syndicate to the ground. Tonight. No, I ran to him, grabbing the arm that was reaching for a handgun. Ronaldo, no, this is the trap. He turned on me, his face a mask of cold fury I had never seen. It was the face of the man who had lost his brother. They have your mother. June, get out of my way. They want you to do this, I screamed, my nails digging into the fine wool of his suit. They're waiting for you. They want you to come in, guns blazing. Think, Ronaldo, think what happens when you do. I forced him to look at me, to see past his rage. The Fuiseta links, what happens to our clean case. The video will show up everywhere. You, the mafia boss, starting a war over a waitress. And me, right by your side. They'll call it criminal association. They'll drop the investigation. Everything we built, the data, the leaks, my speech. It all turns to ash. They win. Ronaldo, they win, and they keep my mother. The logic hit him like a physical blow. The rage in his eyes didn't vanish, but it was caged. He was breathing heavily, his entire body trembling with the violence he was holding back. He saw the checkmate. He saw the walls closing in. So we do nothing, he growled. No, I said, my own fear hardening into a cold, sharp point. We do not do nothing. We do not use your army. We use hers. My hands were perfectly steady. I took my phone, walked to the window, and dialed the number Etta Lynx had given me. Lynx, her voice answered, sharp as glass. They have my mother. Belmont took her from Magnolia House. I said, no fear, just facts. A beat of silence. Where are you? Called her. Irrelevant, you told me you had Belmont people in your bureau. This is your chance to clean house. I'm offering you a deal. You get your real agents, you find my mother, you get her safe. You do that, and I'm yours. What are you saying? I'm going to the gala tonight. I'm going in as bait. And when I'm inside, I'm not just giving a speech. I'm signing the full witness affidavit. I'll testify in open court. I will give you the entire Belmont organization, from the loan sharks to Atlas Hands to the councilmen they own. Just get my mother safe. You'll be walking into the pavilion alone, Lynx said, her voice betraying a hint of something respect. The lion's den is where you find the lions. I said, be ready to move when I give the signal, because I'm going to burn it all down from the inside. I hung up before she could reply. I turned back to Ronaldo. He was watching me, his expression a storm of conflict, fury at his own impotence, terror for my safety, and a raw, burning pride. It is the only move we have left, I said quietly. If you go in there, he said, his voice rough, I will not be blind. I will not be deaf. He went to a safe hidden behind a painting of the river. He returned with a small, black velvet box. He opened it. Inside, nestled on the velvet, was a hair clip, a perfect, elegant black flamingo, its wings inlaid with what looked like tiny black diamonds. It's beautiful, I whispered. It is a microphone, and it is a GPS tracker, he said. His voice clipped in all business. The range is 5 miles. Lynx's team can have the inside. My teams will own the perimeter. But I will hear everything, and I will know where you are, every second. I turned my back to him and lifted my hair. His fingers brushed the skin behind my ear as he fastened the clip. They were not steady. For the first time, Ronaldo Peruzzi's hands were trembling. The cold metal felt like a brand, an intimate, terrifying promise. You're trusting me with your breath, I whispered, remembering his fear, his 9 weapons. His lips were so close to my ear I could feel the warmth. Do not, he whispered back, his voice ragged. Let it be extinguished. The Rivergate Pavilion was a monument to gilded rot. Chandeliers dripped crystals, champagne flowed, and men in tuxedos laughed, their faces flushed with greed, and everywhere, the Atlas Hands logo, a symbol of their obscene profit. Hurricane Helena was a Category 4 now, a monster in the Gulf, and these people were throwing a party. My forged volunteer nurse badge got me in. I was just part of the scenery. I kept my head down, pushing a small medical cart, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. Then I saw him, Logan Vale, and he was in a tuxedo, laughing with the councilman Ronaldo had exposed. He looked like he owned the place. I see him, Ronaldo's voice whispered, a ghost in my ear from a tiny, flesh-colored earpiece. He's off our comms. He's dark. I pushed my cart toward a curtained alcove, pretending to check supplies. Logan stepped into the alcove, his back to me, speaking into a different earpiece. The flamingo clip was flawless. His voice was a low murmur, but I and Ronaldo heard every word. The package is secure, Logan said. The old woman is a perfect insurance policy. The boss is blind, he's chasing the bait, he's completely off balance. I heard Ronaldo's breath hitch, a sharp, violent intake of air, the sound of betrayal, raw and absolute. The girl is here, Logan continued, and I could hear the smile in his voice. On the floor, dressed like a candy striper, she thinks she's a spy. It's pathetic. Let her have her moment, he chuckled, a low, ugly sound. It is time for the week to leave the table. My friend, Peruzzi's reign is over tonight. A sound crackled in my ear, a single sickening crunch of bone or hard plastic. Ronaldo had just crushed something in his fist, 3 miles away. But he gave no order. He did not send his men. He just listened, his hand clenched, forced to endure the poison of his most trusted man's betrayal. On stage in 5, a coordinator shouted. The main lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the podium. The head of the Belmont Syndicate, a man with a dazzling smile and the deadest eyes I had ever seen, walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. Friends, heroes of New Orleans, he boomed, his arms open wide. As the great storm Helena approaches, we gather to announce a new, visionary fund to protect our beloved city. I stood at the back of the grand ballroom, smiling. My posture relaxed. I hid my terror. I smiled like everything was fine. I smiled as the first powerful gusts of the hurricane, the outer bands of the real storm, began to rattle the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of the pavilion, a low, deep moan that promised to tear everything down. Hurricane Helena made landfall at 9:13 p.m. She did not arrive as a storm. She arrived as a Category 4 battering ram. The city's power grid vaporized. The world plunged into a screaming darkness, lit only by the frantic, pulsing strobes of emergency generators. The sound of the wind was not a howl. It was a physical, crushing weight, punctuated by the high, thin wail of civil defense sirens and the thump, thump, thump of waves breaking over the levees and onto the city streets. The gala at the Rivergate Pavilion dissolved into raw panic. The broadcast feed died. The generators kicked in, but the party was over. The official response, just as Belmont planned, was a spectacular failure. The intelligence I had fed Etta Lynx, combined with Logan's false blind spot at the gala, and sent the FUS, the GCIB, and the fictional Delta Region Emergency Committee scrambling. They deployed their full tactical teams to a warehouse in the 9th Ward, chasing a phantom. They were looking for a hostage who was never there. Their efforts swallowed by the storm. Ronaldo was moving in the opposite direction. He knew Logan's betrayal was absolute. He knew the gala was a feint. The tracker in my flamingo hair clip was broadcasting a steady, defiant pulse from the one location Logan had never mentioned, the abandoned St. Delphine refinery, a skeletal ruin of rust and iron on the industrial canal. The real exchange point? He led a small team, just 3 men, moving through the flooded, lightless streets in a high-water tactical vehicle. While the city's official protectors were chasing ghosts, Ronaldo prepared for the reality. He sat in the back, the vehicle lurching through the rising water, the storm raging outside. He was silent. He was performing his ritual. He checked his 9 items, one by one, the 2 handguns snug in their holsters, the sawn-off, heavy under his vest, the 2 daggers, one at his boot, one at his back, the switchblade, the collapsible steel baton, the garrote wire, coiled flat, the heavy, glass-breaking pen. Each click and snap was a prayer in the dark, a promise to his brother, a promise to me. I was already inside. I had used the gala's chaos, blending in with the terrified catering staff being evacuated in company vans. I'd seen the Atlas Hands logo on one of the transports and bluffed my way on. I was just another kitchen worker, scared, lost in the storm, accidentally brought to the refinery. Now, I was moving through the guts of the St. Delphine. The place was a maze of rust and shadows, the air thick with the smell of mold and the sweet, clinging rot of old molasses. The wind shrieked through the broken windows, a chorus of ghosts. I was not a nurse. I was not a waitress. I was a shadow. I moved as Ronaldo had taught me, my feet light on the grated metal walkways. In my pocket was the small, battery-powered broadcast device, the needle I was supposed to use to hijack the gala's feed. The gala was dead, but the city's emergency broadcast system was live. If I could hook this in, I could bypass Belmont's men and broadcast our truth to every radio, every television still running on generator power. Every step was a decision. Every shadow was a threat. Ronaldo's team breached the refinery from the flooded ground floor. He moved upward, following the tracker's signal, climbing the iron stairs. He found Logan waiting for him on a high iron gangway, silhouetted against a shattered window, the storm raging behind him. "Boss," Logan said. His voice was casual, but he held a heavy pistol, aimed at Ronaldo's chest. "You should have stayed in the shadows. This girl, she made you sloppy. She made you weak. She made me focused. Logan," Ronaldo's voice was lethally calm. I heard it all, a distorted echo through the flamingo clip. "You forgot the code. You forgot Mateo. You touched a healer." "Mateo was weak, just like you." Logan lunged. He fired, but Ronaldo was already moving. Ronaldo did not shoot. I heard a grunt. the heavy thwack of a block, the metallic shing of the steel baton snapping open. He kept his promise to me. There was a brief, brutal flurry of motion. Ronaldo, heavier, stronger, his rage a cold, precise instrument. He broke Logan's wrist. The sound was a wet snap and slammed him against the railing. The gun clattered, falling into the rising water below. Ronaldo pinned him, one hand at his throat. He did not choke him, he just held him. "It's over," Ronaldo said, his voice ragged. He pulled a digital recorder from his pocket, one of his items. Repurposed. He held it to Logan's mouth. "Talk. The exchange. Where is she who is the federal contact? Talk, or I let the storm have you." Logan, his arm shattered, his loyalty a broken ruin, began to talk. He confessed. The setup, the deal with Belmont, the identity of the fooest traitor inside Lynx's own bureau. Ronaldo recorded every word and, using a secure device, sent the audio file directly to Etta Lynx's private server. Belmont, however, was not relying on Logan. They had a contingency. A deep, groaning sound, like the refinery itself was tearing apart, echoed from below, a failsafe. "He's opening the flood valves," Ronaldo yelled into his comms. "The canal. He's flooding the lower levels." This was the real trap, not a kill box, a drowning pool. The water surged in, not a leak, but a tidal wave of brown, churning canal water mixed with the filth of the storm. It rose fast, swallowing the ground floor, climbing the walls. The iron ladders became slick, treacherous cascades. While Ronaldo dealt with Logan, I had found her in a dry storage room on the 3rd level, one floor above the rising water. My mother, Irma. She was tied to a chair, but she was awake. Her eyes were wide with terror, but when she saw me, they cleared, just for a second. "Aunt." "Junebug," she whispered. "It's so loud, the walls are shaking." "I know, Mom, I know." My nurse's training took over. My hands, which had been shaking, went steady. I did not panic. I did not rush. I kept my voice low and calm as I cut the ropes with a small knife from my catering kit. "We're going to take a walk. It's just like the drills we used to do. Remember, just a drill." I synchronized my breathing with hers. A slow, steady rhythm, an anchor against the shriek of the wind. I got her to her feet, her arm draped over my shoulder. The water was rising. We had to go down to get out. We found Ronaldo on the main turbine deck, a massive cavern of iron and steam pipes. He had Logan zip-tied to a pillar, unconscious. The water was already ankle-deep, swirling with debris. The emergency lights, the only lights, were flashing, red, black, red, black. Each pulse illuminated the scene, freezing us in flashes of terrifying, stark reality. Ronaldo, his suit soaked, blood on his knuckles, me supporting my mother who was trembling. "June," he said, his voice cutting through the storm. "I have her," I said. "She's safe." "Nowhere is safe." The head of the Belmont Syndicate, a man named Marcus Thorne, appeared on the gantry above us, flanked by 2 men. He looked down, his tuxedo ruined, his smile gone. "This is the end of the line. Peruzzi, you should have taken the deal. The whole city is drowning, and you are in the drain." He raised his hand, not with a gun, but a signal. The final set piece was arranged. The turbine room was our stage. The storm was our audience. The rising water was the curtain, and it was coming down, fast. It was either we exposed them all before the water took us, or we would sink with their secrets. The water was at our ankles, cold and oily. Marcus Thorne stood on the gantry above us, a king on a throne of rust, laughing at the chaos he had created. "It's over. Peruzzi," he boomed over the wind. "The city is dark. Your feed is dead, and you are trapped in the drain." Ronaldo ignored him. He looked at me, his eyes sharp and clear in the flashing red emergency lights. "The broadcast," he said. I knew. I pulled the small battery-powered transmitter from my pocket. "The PA system," I yelled, pointing to a rusted control box on the main turbine. Thorne saw the movement. "No." But Ronaldo was already moving. He was not a man. He was a force of nature. He sprinted through the rising, churning water, reaching the box. Thorne's men fired, the bullets sparking off the iron, but they were too late. Ronaldo slammed the device against the ancient junction box, jamming the wires into the contacts. A sound ripped through the refinery, a high-pitched, deafening screech of feedback. It was the sound of the refinery itself screaming. And then it broadcast. The recording of my voice, the clear, medical facts about the ghost ledgers and the fake vaccinations, blasted from every ancient horn speaker in the complex. Ronaldo had patched it in, but he had also done more. He had tied it to the city's emergency frequency. My voice, and the damning evidence of the Atlas Hands fraud, was cutting through the storm. It was going out over the emergency broadcast system, to every car radio, every battery-operated television, every phone still clinging to a signal. We were unmasking them, live, using their own storm against them. Thorne roared in incoherent rage. He saw his empire crumbling. He did not lunge for Ronaldo. He lunged for me. He leaped from the gantry, landing in the water, and grabbed me, yanking me back against his chest, his arm locked around my throat, and I felt the cold, hard press of a gun against my temple. "Shut it off," he screamed, his face contorted. "Shut it off right now, Peruzzi, or I will blow her head off. I will do it." Ronaldo froze. He was 10 yards away. He slowly raised his hands, palms open and low, showing he was not a threat. My mother screamed, a thin sound, but one of Ronaldo's men pulled her back behind the turbine, shielding her. "Let her go, Marcus," Ronaldo said, his voice quiet, but it carried. He began to walk toward us, his steps slow and deliberate in the heavy, thigh-deep water. "It is over. You have lost. Let her go. It is me you want." "Stay back. I will kill her." Ronaldo kept walking. "Take me. Let her go." Thorne's arm was crushing my throat. I was fading. I had to use it. The training. Create space. Be vicious. I stopped struggling. I let my body go limp for just a second, and then I whispered, my voice ragged, just for Thorne's ear. "He is right," I choked out. You will not do it. You are not a killer, Marcus. You are just an accountant." I felt his body recoil. The deepest, most personal insult. His ego shattered. "I am a king," he bellowed, his grip adjusting for just a fraction of a second, shifting his focus from my temple to my face to snarl at me. It was the only opening I would get. It was the only opening Ronaldo needed. There was a sound like a steel whip cracking the air. Shing. Ronaldo had not drawn his gun. He had drawn his collapsible baton in a single fluid motion. He lunged forward, not at Thorne, but at his hand. There was a sickening crack of steel on bone. Thorne screamed, a high-pitched animal sound. The gun flew from his shattered fingers and vanished into the black, rising water. At that exact moment, the refinery groaned, a deep, structural tearing of metal. A section of the outer wall, weakened by the storm, collapsed inward. A solid wall of black, raging canal water exploded into the turbine room. It hit us like a freight train. The force of it ripped me from Thorne's grasp and sent me tumbling. It slammed Ronaldo off his feet, his balance gone. I saw him go under, swallowed by the current. I grabbed a rung of a steel ladder, my fingers screaming in protest. The water was at my chest, a freezing, racing torrent. I looked frantically. There. A hand. Just his hand, reaching from the brown, swirling chaos. He was being pulled away. I lunged, grabbing his wrist, his fingers locked onto mine. "Don't you dare!" I screamed into the storm. "Don't you let go!" His grip was iron. He found a footing, and together, pulling against the impossible weight of the water, we hauled each other up onto the steel ladder, climbing just above the torrent, clinging to the rungs, soaked, sputtering, but alive. The massive steel doors of the refinery burst open, but it was not the storm. It was a phalanx of tactical lights, of black-clad figures. Etta Lynx stood in the center, her face a mask of cold fury, her weapon aimed. Fuis, hands in the air. "Marcus Thorne, you are under arrest." The room was flooded with agents. They moved with brutal efficiency. I saw 2 medics rush to my mother, wrapping her in a thermal blanket, her eyes wide but safe. They pulled Marcus Thorne, defeated and whimpering, from the water. And then I saw them approach the pillar where Ronaldo had left his betrayer. They cut the zip ties and hauled a cuffed Logan Vale to his feet. Etta Lynx stepped in front of him. She held up Ronaldo's digital recorder. "Logan Vale," she announced, her voice cutting through the noise. "Based on this confession, you are under arrest for conspiracy, kidnapping, and the betrayal of your oath. You will cooperate fully." Thorne, surrounded by agents, began to laugh, a low, wet, gurgling laugh. "You think you won?" He coughed, water streaming from his ruined tuxedo. "You think you can just walk out of here?" He was fumbling in his pocket. He pulled out a small, black detonator. "This whole refinery is wired, a parting gift from me to the city. If I go down, we all go down." He pressed the button. Nothing. He stared at it, his face a mask of confusion. He pressed it again, and again. A single, pathetic fizzle erupted from a junction box on the far wall, a puff of blue smoke, and then silence. Ronaldo was leaning against the ladder, panting. He looked at his hand, then at the junction box, then at me. "The pen," he whispered. In the chaotic moment as Lynx's team entered, as Thorne fumbled for the detonator, Ronaldo had seen it. He had ripped the heavy, metallic, glass-breaking pen from his breast pocket, his 9th item. With a desperate, perfect throw, he had flung it across the room. It had shattered the plastic cover of the detonator's receiver and embedded itself in the circuit board, shorting the entire system. The explosion was gone. The last trap had failed. The chaos swirled around us, agents shouting, the storm still screaming outside, but in the center of it, the fight was over. I moved through the knee-deep water, pushing against the current until I was standing in front of him. He was soaked, his white shirt transparent, the bandage at his temple gone, but he was alive. He looked at me, his eyes stripped of all their armor. "I have carried 9 items," he whispered, his voice raw, "just for me. For 10 years, a promise, a superstition." He looked at the smoking circuit box, then back at my face. "Steel did not save me tonight. June, you did." I put my hands on his face, my fingers trembling. He put his hands on my waist, pulling me close, and I kissed him. It was not the desperate, anchoring kiss from the machine room. This was different. This was a claiming. It was slow, and it was certain. It was the end of the fear, and the beginning of everything else. It was the taste of rain, and metal, and survival. His lips were sure, his breath catching, then steadying against mine. We just stood there, foreheads pressed together, alive. An island of stillness in the middle of the wreckage. In the days after the storm, the city began to breathe. The broadcast had worked. My testimony, backed by Lynx's federal warrant and Logan's full confession, decapitated the Belmont Syndicate. Foas and the Bayou Beacon tore Atlas Hands Relief apart in the public square. The corrupt councilmen were indicted. Magnolia House was placed under permanent protective watch, its bills paid in full for the next decade by an anonymous donor. Ronaldo did not leave his world, but he rebuilt it. He handed the gray operations to lieutenants who now lived by his new, cleaner code. Peruzzi and Sons Logistics became, for the first time, exactly what it said on the card, a logistics company. 1 week later, the rooftop of the jazz club, the Safe House. The sun was rising. It was a perfect, clear dawn. The sky a flawless gold. The air smelled of damp earth and new beginnings. A slow, smoky blues tune was playing from the radio. Ronaldo stood with me by the railing, watching the Mississippi turn to liquid light. He was not in a suit. He was in a simple white shirt, his sleeves rolled up. He took something from his pocket. It was the metal pen, the one that had saved us. It was scratched, but intact. "This," he said, placing it in my hand. "It was the 9th, the glass breaker, the last resort, the emergency tool." He closed my fingers around the cool, heavy metal. It is yours now, June, a testament to a new kind of freedom. He took my other hand, the one that was not holding the pen. Dance with me. We moved slowly, in time with the music, the city waking up below us. The sound of the river was a gentle, steady rhythm. He pulled me close, his lips near my ear, his breath warm. "From now on," he whispered, his voice a low, steady promise that I felt in my bones. "I only carry 8. I trust the 9th to you." Thank you all so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from, so please drop a comment below and let's share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give us a little extra support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.